and welcome to the Nitty Gritty, brought to you by the good folks at Beyond the Big Ten. I am Penn State men's basketball beat writer Jon Sauber. He is Tim Frazier, Penn State men's basketball legend, who played at Rec Hall about a decade ago, which feels like a long time ago, if I'm being honest. And Penn State did the same thing last night. We're going to jump right into that because, Tim, I don't know that anyone saw that coming.
I think if you look at the stats and you look at the paper on paper, they weren't supposed to. But I think that this team is shown all year round when it backs up against the wall after 3 losses in a row. Situation going on with Kanye Clary, everything against them, they were able to rally, and I think this is the perfect picture for this team. So I know a lot of people didn't pick them to win, but I had them with a slight shot of winning just because of everything that was going on. A lot of times, and I've been on teams where drastic things happen that it brings the team, either the team folds or it brings the team closer together and they have a lot more juice. You see it in situations like when coaches get fired and the next game they come out and they play, or guys get hurt.
Happened with Ohio State beating Purdue last week when Chris Holtman got fired. The game after.
It's kind of like a shake into the group, to shake the group up and like, hey man, it's time to let's rally together and pull out the win. But man, credit to them, man. I've been saying it the last couple of weeks. Credit to Coach Rhodes, because man, to be able to bring a team together when something that's like when he had to make such a big decision on Kanye, and bring the team together and be able to have them focused to be able to play a top 15 team in the country in Rec Hall, where it's going to be a lot of fans and the whiteout and everything that was surrounding the game, to be able to have that team ready to go. And even when they were down, to be able to come back and fight through and get that win, man, you got to give, I'm continuing to give him credit for what he's been able to do this year, and especially what he did last night.
Yeah. And you said it, like it did feel like one of those situations where, Rec Hall, Illinois isn't like, they're good, but they are susceptible. It felt like Penn State might have had a shot, but like just watching that game, being there, like it felt like they kept giving the crowd reason to buy in, and they would cut it to like 7, and they would cut it to like 10, and then Illinois would pull back away and take it to double digits if it was at 7, or take it back to 15 if it was at 12. And then with 2:35 left, they lead by 10. Illinois does. And with 35 seconds left, Illinois led by 7. I talked to a couple people on the Penn State beat about this. The way that game ended is like once in a lifetime stuff. Like an 8-0 run in the last 35 seconds is crazy. Like
college is insane. Yeah, in college it's definitely insane.
Especially with the 30-second shot clock, right? Like in the NBA, it's like, okay, you hit a 3 and then get a stop, and then you hit another 3 and it's like, all right, it's a 2-point game. You got to play. Yeah, and the advancing with timeouts. So Illinois, Jameel Brown pulls up for a 3 in transition, which I asked him about actually after the game. I thought it was the right play, but I think a lot of people will kind of bristle at that. He had 2 rebounders in front of him. There was only one Illinois defender in front of him, so it was a 2-on-1 if he missed for a rebound. He hits the shot. They're down 4. The big thing that happened, I think that people are overlooking, Illinois trying to inbound the ball has to call a timeout, and then they inbound it, and then they have to call another timeout, right? And so it's like now they're out, and you can't run the baseline because you've already inbounded it the second time. They get it into Terrence Shannon, who gets stripped by Jameel Brown, who, again, was enormous in that game. Puff Johnson picks it up, gets the layup, and that's when it was like 89-87, and you were like, oh boy. I was like, this is, I felt bad for everyone who was writing game stories from it, because you could just hear them deleting everything they had already written to start over, because it was going to be a completely different outcome. And that's probably a good way to talk about the game being at Rec Hall, because Coleman Hawkins goes to the line. I think he's like an 82% free throw shooter and misses both. And what I think some would call a case of ball don't lie, because it looked like he traveled before he was fouled. There was some uproar in Rec Hall, and credit to the fans. That was a raucous crowd if I've ever seen one. Yeah. They were like willing them to a victory on some level. But for him to miss 2 free throws as in like an 80% free throw shooter is not just like improbable. It's like almost impossible, right? He is too good of a shooter to miss. And you wonder how much, like, it's a new sight line. He hasn't played there before. The crowd behind the student sections behind the, you know what I mean? The backboard, he can see them as he's shooting. And then you get like, and I know I'm just running through what happened here, but it's still unbelievable. And like, I'm still processing it on some level. For Zach Hicks, like they were trying to get Ace Baldwin downhill, because Rhodes mentioned this after the game when I asked him about it. They're trying to get Ace downhill. He gets walled off, and he makes the right play and pitching it to Hicks behind him, who just rises up and fires with 4 seconds left. Like, no fear, goes for it. And Hawkins commits the foul there, goes to the line, said he wasn't thinking about anything, right? Like he said, he was like essentially clear-minded as he was shooting those free throws to hit all 3. And then even then, it was like, yes, they just went on an 8-0 run in 30 seconds. Illinois has the ball with 4 seconds left and gets a shot at the rim. Yeah, like a legitimate, like one of those things where I was like, oh man, like this is about to be like from like an uproar. The fans are like, over the moon to like devastation in a second. Cause he got there and he put it up and I was like, that's going in. It falls off the rim. Fans storm the court. I just like the idea of playing at Rec Hall is so good for this team. There are logistical reasons why it won't happen full time. But man, to me, this feels like something they got to do more than once. Definitely more than once every 10 years. And frankly, I think more than once a year. And I talked to, I already reported this in, my game story, but I talked to a program source who said that the plan is to play there more moving forward, right? Like this will not be, they won't be waiting like everyone had to wait between now and Princeton.
Yeah. Credit Rec Hall, phenomenal venue. You've seen it in volleyball, you've seen it in wrestling, and now you're able to see it in basketball on a big stage because of the win against a high ranked opponent. But I do want to slow everybody's roll. Like I've seen on Twitter, I've seen everybody say, "Oh no, we should just move the basketball to Rec Hall." Like you said, logistics is a huge issue.
It's
and at
not
the same
easy.
time, I think it's not easy. And at the same time, the reason this game was so packed and so special, I hate to say it, is because it's a rarity. Like, so if you tell me that, hey, every game is at Rec Hall, it might not be as packed and full as it was last night. So my thing is like when it's a rare occasion, like a whiteout, when it's a whiteout in the football games, everybody comes. It's a whiteout. It's a special game. It's already marked on the calendar. It's the same thing. I think Penn State basketball should continue to use it as that. I do think there should be more games in the season played there, but we should circle on the calendar. Hey, this is what we're going to have. We're going to play. Hey, this certain have a game in the Big Ten, have a non-conference game, or 2 games in the Big Ten there, and just use it as there. Maybe 3 games a season to be. Hey, but this is a game circle that we're going to have in Rec Hall. Just how the promotion and what they've done the last 3-4 days before leading up to that game. That's all you heard about. Rec Hall this, Rec Hall that, Rec Hall that, whiteout. So it brought the attention to, hey, you know what? This game's not at the BJC anymore. It's somewhere else. Hey, man, maybe we'll come today. Hey, it's going to be a big game. We're playing top 15 Illinois. Let's go out there. And you got extra fans that probably didn't come or wouldn't have come to the BJC because of the rarity of like, you know what, let's go back and get this old feeling of what it used to be like when we played at the BJC.
Well, and the way Penn State handled it, I thought was interesting because it was only open to season ticket holders as far as I know, and there was no like secondary market for it, which I thought was strange. Which was why I think it wasn't entirely full. It was 6,150 was the crowd at the game, and it holds 6,500. But I'm curious your thoughts on this. This is the idea that I've heard thrown around. It's not something I thought of. Other people. Plenty of people have come up with this, but the idea of playing essentially all of the midweek Big Ten games, there's 4 of them this year at Rec Hall. So you'd have 4 games during the season at Rec Hall because those are the nights we all know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're rarely Monday games in, January and February, where it's just tougher to get fans into the Bryce Jordan Center, right? Those are the games where you're going to have the smallest crowd. So even if it's not a full Rec Hall, like 4,500 fans at Rec Hall are better than 4,500 at the Bryce Jordan Center. And I think that's a nice way to bridge the gap because part of the issue here is Rec Hall is the home to wrestling. And wrestling has won 10 of the last 12 national titles, is probably going to win an 11th of the last 13 this year, probably going to win a 12th the next year too. Like it is a dynastic program that I imagine they don't want to mess with, right? They just want to let them do their thing. Well, those midweek games don't interfere with wrestling as much, right? There's no wrestling matches during the week. And so you can schedule the men's basketball games. And yes, I know it's hard to get the court over there. Like you said, too, the logistics aren't easy. 4 times a year, I think you can do it. Maybe 5 if there's a 5th, if the Big Ten is really putting it to Penn State and giving them 5 midweek home games. But I think that's the situation where it's like, okay, you're also not limiting yourself when it comes to like ticket sales and stuff because you're still having your bigger games, the weekend games at the Bryce Jordan Center. And you have, for your smaller games, you're having a better crowd, even if it's smaller. And the other thing is, like, part of the allure of Rec Hall is you want the success to happen there to then draw people to the Bryce Jordan Center on the weekend. And this is going to be a really good test case because they've got Indiana at noon on State Patty's Day weekend this Saturday at the Bryce Jordan Center. So it's like, okay, how many people did they draw in from Rec Hall to get them to come back for the weekend game? Because noon on a Saturday is just easier to get to. And so I'm curious to see, like, again, it's State Patties. The student turnout will be interesting to watch. But I think it's a good test case for how well that can work and how much you can turn like the Rec Hall fans into the full-time fans. Instead of it becoming a novelty, it's something that it's like the gatekeeping thing, right? Like it allows them, it gets them in the door, and then you get them to stay at the Bryce Jordan Center. Because I hate to break it to everyone, they're going to be playing at the Bryce Jordan Center for a while, as far as I know.
For sure. I think that's a possibility. Like, it's the first time me hearing that. I think, hey, there's only 4 games during the week. Why not move it into there? Like, it makes sense. I think if I'm outside looking in, or if I'm a coach, I would want to pick the games. Like, I would want, like I said, I get a chance to play a top 15 team or a top 10 team. I wish, like, going into the season, like, we knew Illinois was going to be somewhat type of good. So, to be able to circle that game and have that in Rec Hall compared to if we're playing a Minnesota or, somebody else that, not saying that
lower
that game
brand
doesn't
recognition.
Matter. Right. Correct. So I think that would be if I'm a coach, because I know from experience from last night that, hey, man, we get a game at Rec Hall, more than likely it's going to be some type of 3/4 to 4th to fully packed, to where we're going to have some type of whiteout, some type of experience. And I want that against, the best team, to be able to show what, hey, this team is all about. And, how these teams playing, man, we want them to continue to win for the rest of the season. And we talk about next year, we talk about if Penn State becomes a ranked team, like, we want those games against other ranked teams to be in that, so we can have the biggest advantage from fans, from the atmosphere, from familiarity with the players as well, to be able to play there. And just the intensity that venue brought last night, and has brought for me when I played, and brought for the other teams when they played there as well. So my whole thing would just be able to, if we could pick the games, but then again, you don't know.
It's the Big Ten. You ain't picking anything.
Yeah. And logistics, you never, you know what I mean? So it's going to be hard, but I do want them to be able to somehow figure out, if not, one game a year has been kind of the minimum. Let's try to max it up and see how many we can get there throughout the season next year. If not next year, the year after that. This is not set in stone by any means, so I'm not like saying that with a guarantee. I would be surprised if they didn't play at least one there next year. And I would anticipate that it would be more than one next year. Now, you have to work it out. Like, that can change between now and when the schedule's set, so who knows? But you mentioned, like, being able to pick the teams. I think that the upside of that, even if you do play, like, a Minnesota who maybe isn't perceived as such a great program, and, I don't know, like, Nebraska or someone like that, you still have two, like, odds are you're going to get at least 2 games against, marquee opponents, just because it's, like, there aren't a ton of, like, non-brands, as you would say. You know what I mean? Like, as we would call them. Like, it's just likely that you end up getting in Illinois or in Iowa or a Michigan or a Michigan State, just because the Big Ten really does have that many schools like that. And it can be tough to project year over year who's going to be how good. Like you said, I think we all thought Illinois would be good going into this year. They were a fringe top 25 team, probably a little bit better than I think people anticipated, which helped out. Same with the upset win over Wisconsin at the BJC. Right.
I think, like, so it can be tough to gauge, but 100%, if there's a way to guarantee that you're going to get, like maybe there's a conversation with the Big Ten, like, hey, we're actually okay with playing this home game in the middle of the week against this team, because usually teams want those games on the weekend because they can pack their arena. And so it's like, okay, we're okay with having this game midweek. Like, if you want to schedule that way, maybe there's a give and take there. I'm not sure. I'm not in those negotiations, fortunately, because it sounds very stressful. Yeah. But yeah, I think they just have to be there more. Like, it has to be a bigger part.
Question for you, John. Are those teams from the West Coast, are they in the conference next year?
They are, and that is not something that I had actually thought about. And that would be very entertaining to have, like, an Oregon in Rec Hall for the first time. Although they don't have it is funny, they don't have, like, the experience of having to endure the BJC and how cavernous it is and how empty it is. So maybe you want them to be scared of the BJC for a little bit for the first time. Like, you want to bring them in, you want to lure them in with the Bryce Jordan Center, make it real quiet when they're playing a game. And then the next year you hit them with rec call. And so then they're confused, right? It's a little counterpunch there. But no, I do think like that would be, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. I think those would be like a fun way to introduce them to the conference, or at least to the campus, right? For those programs.
For me, I was just thinking of the logistics piece of that, because now we're adding those 4 or 5 teams from the West Coast, and
that's going to be a total mess.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they're going to make that, how that's even going to work. You teams flying from all the way to the East Coast over 5 hours, 6 hours on plane just to play a game, so.
And I think what we'll probably see is like road trips, right? Where it's like
2 games.
They're playing, Rutgers and Penn State and Maryland are all facing like Oregon in the same 10-day stretch or something. And then Penn State is playing like, USC, UCLA in the same, 4-day stretch or whatever, just to kind of minimize that travel. Because as we know, it's become about the money, and that's dictated everything. And, it does make it tough on, like, I keep telling people this with football next year. Penn State travels to USC to play football on October 12th, and they have a bye week the week after, which is good. But I don't know when Penn State's going to fly in, like how early they're going to fly into Los Angeles, because NFL players like are used to it, right? Where you have to go in, spend like a day in somewhere, and then fly cross country back. I think for a lot of these guys, this is going to be pretty new, right? Where you go in maybe hopefully Thursday, but maybe Friday, play a game Saturday, and then immediately fly back Saturday night. Like, I have to imagine that's not going to be easy. But that is a story for a different podcast. This is, this is still one of the most shocking, I think, upsets that I can remember. This Illinois game specifically. We talked about like the atmosphere of it, right, and the mismatch that they had, right. That Illinois had frankly a big time athleticism advantage, which I don't think many teams have against Penn State at this point. They're usually they've been pretty athletic this year, and they've been able to put put games away with how they run in transition, how they are able to kind of force turnovers. Terrence Shannon was getting the rim at will. Coleman Hawkins was hitting from deep. Like, there were a lot of reasons that Penn State shouldn't have won this game. And I think one that people might point to is one you and I haven't discussed yet, but came before the game, when Kanye Clary was dismissed from the team. Monday afternoon, it was announced. I'm not totally sure on the timeline of that one for any on the record conversations or anything I'm comfortable saying publicly, at least. But it is it's a strange situation, right? And one that felt like it kind of hit its boiling point. And truth be told, you and I had mentioned a lot this year that there will be people transferring at the end of the year. There would be movement that maybe you didn't expect. And this was one of those situations that I was kind of alluding to, where there was maybe not combustibility potential, because I didn't see it ending this way, quite frankly. But I thought there was a chance that, other schools would want Kanye, because he is, was the leading scorer, and because he is, a gifted offensive player, a gifted scorer specifically. But this was, like I said, didn't see it coming this way, but I'm not overly surprised that the Penn State Kanye Clary relationship ended before his college career ended, I guess is probably the best way to put it. And I thought the most curious comment last night is something you and I have kind of said, but Brad Underwood after that game said, like, pretty bluntly, that he thought Penn State was better without Kanye Clary. And I mean, last night they looked it.
For me, I'm very frustrated at this situation, because I think a lot of it has to do with the transfer portal. I think guys come into teams, and if they don't like it, they're like, you know what, I'll just leave. I'll go somewhere else. And I'm not a fan of it. I think that when you sign up for certain things, even though things may not be going your way, it's what makes you into a man, what makes you into a better player, what puts you through adversity. And that's what adversity hit for Kanye Clary. And obviously I don't know, so I'm speaking on speculation. I hate doing that. We don't know the facts of what happened. But for me, it just seemed like, he was, because he has the option, you know what, I'll just leave. I'll just go somewhere else. Or I'll go somewhere where a lot of people would say, hey, where I'm wanted or where I'm respected, or whatever you may be. And at the end of the day, it's not really the case. I don't see Rose. I've never seen Rose as a coach that didn't respect Kanye, or then I think he does what he believes, and he's going to do what's best for the team. And I think Kanye hit a wall at adversity, and he felt like, you know what, I was bigger than the team. And that's what I hate, that he felt that if that was the case, that he felt that he was bigger than the team, and he felt that he could, you know what, this isn't for me, I'll just leave. And I just think that, you know, I mean, that's gonna hurt, you know, him, you know, later on, especially we talk about, you know, obviously I don't want it to. I want him to be able to be successful, go somewhere and be, you know, play the best he can be, continue to grow and become a pro. But I do believe that, man, with this transfer portal, it gives guys and gives these kids rights to be able to, you know, when adversity hits them, and I'll just go up and leave, because you know what, I was averaging 15 points a game. Hey, I was the leading scorer on this team. You know what, somebody else will want me. I'll go do this. I'll go do that. And when you live a life of just, hey, you know, anytime something just hits you, like anytime something isn't going your way, you decide to go somewhere else. I think that you run from, you know, what's really in the mirror. And at the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm not playing as good as I was early in the season. And I have to look in the mirror and become better for myself, better for my teammates. And I always got to put the team first. Because on paper, you look at it, man, if you keep Kanye, you have Ace, and those guys continue to grow, that could be a dynamic duo in the Big Ten and in the nation. And now we're looking at a situation where, you know, I mean, we wish Kanye the best wherever he goes. And obviously now Ace has to take on a larger role, and other guys are stepping up. And, you know, that show last night with their win. But it bothers me, and I'm disappointed in the whole situation. I felt like, hey, you know what, because of the transfer portal, you know what, I'll just leave and I'll go somewhere else. And for me, I'm sorry, John, but even for me, I had the opportunity to leave when Coach DeChellis left. And, you know, that was the adversity for me. He's like, all right, man, I got a new coach. He's going to bring his own guys in. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. But for me, I felt like, you know what, I had signed up for this, and I'm going to stick through it. There are going to be some ups and downs. Hey, there's going to be some pains. But at the end of the day, I felt like that's what's got me to where I was, to be a 10-year pro, to be an 8-year NBA pro, because of the times I was able to stick through it all, stick through the worst, stick through when things weren't going my way. And a lot of times in life, man, things aren't going to go your way, and you have to be able to stick through that, be able to continue to play, and just, hey, look in the mirror. Like, my thing, I had to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I could go somewhere else. I could go close to home. Everybody's saying, hey, this is what I should do. This is what I could go another Big Ten school. I can go back to the West Coast. I can go live in LA, you know what I mean? There's always these old type of things of what you could do. But at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and say, you know what, I started this, and I know I can achieve, and I could be an all Big Ten guard. Why not stay here and do that? And but again, I'm talking, you know, this is all speculation, and, you know, I mean, the only people that really knows the truth is Kanye's teammates and Coach Rhodes. So, but I'm really disappointed in how this situation happened. Even if he decided to leave at the end of the year, but I still believe you stick it throughout the rest of this year, because not necessarily for yourself, but for your teammates.
Yeah, and that's like, this is what makes this like such a complicated situation, right? And you know, I said I didn't see it ending like this. I think once he, unfortunately, and like, because you hate to see this stuff, especially once he suffered the injury against Michigan and had the concussion and missed a couple games, you saw some of the what the team looked like without him, and that maybe there was I don't want this to come off as like me bashing Kanye, to be clear. Like, Kanye, every interaction I've had with him is great. He's a nice kid. Like, he's always been incredibly, you know what I mean, forthcoming with his time. He's always been honest with us and the media anytime I've had a chance to talk to him, at whether it's preseason this year or he's at the podium this year, media day, all that stuff. Like, he's always been fantastic. And I think he's a good kid, and I think he's going to get things figured out and have success at the next school. But I do think like that was kind of the window into, okay, maybe the best version of this Penn State team or Penn State program even next year is one that maybe is, you scale back the Kanye centric stuff offensively, the ball moves more, he picks his spots a little more, and it becomes more of a movement based offense rather than isolation, pick and roll scoring and everything. And I think things kind of went by the wayside a little bit as that turned into, he lost minutes, right? Like, he just wasn't playing as much when he came back from the concussion. And you saw that he looked more unsure of himself when he was on the court, right? Like, he was making, I brought up on a recent podcast when I think it was against Northwestern, he drives to the lane and he tries a floater through contact. And then the next time he gets in the lane, there's no one there. And like, he can get to that floater a little easier, but he kicks it out to kind of no one. And it felt like he was indecisive a little bit in that moment. And I think that's a good, like, that is a nice window into all of it, right? Like, that's kind of the whole thing, right? Like the the lack of cohesion when he was on the court when he returned, and they had success without him, and you have to balance like assimilating your leading scorer in when you're having success without him on the court. Okay, what does that mean? Is it a coincidence? Like, was it just happenstance based on the opponent, or was it real? And is there something that needs to be figured out? I think it was real. I think pretty clearly the Penn State staff decided it was real when they scaled his minutes back and kind of tried to reassimilate him in differently. I mean, it seems obvious that there was clearly disagreement about that. I've seen a lot of people speculating about like academics and stuff. That's, I mean, totally unfair to the kid to do stuff like that, I think. But like from a basketball standpoint, I think it was becoming increasingly clear that the fit maybe wasn't there. Like you said, you hate to see it blow up to this, right? Turn into the dismissal where, Rhodes said he took ownership of it. He said it was coach's decision to dismiss him from the team and for him not to finish the year. But you hate to see it get to that point because I think it's fair to say that all parties, I'm trying to be careful about what I say, but all parties are at fault on some level in this. And I think everyone kind of has to take ownership of that. You hope for Kanye that, like you said, we all need to self-evaluate all the time. I'm constantly doing it in my line of work. I'm sure you were constantly doing it too, right? Like you're trying to figure out what you're doing wrong, what you need to do better. I think what he probably has to do from an on-court standpoint is kind of figure that out, figure out what him being on the ball means for his teammates, what it looks like in a way that helps his teammates, in a way that elevates the team. Because it clearly wasn't working late here. And I think, for the sake of the program, I don't know that it impacts much because, like I said, this was something that I kind of thought was coming at the end of the season. It just happened in a different way, and it's going to look different for 4 more regular season games and then whatever postseason, that's Big Ten tournament and any other tournament. But yeah, I just think I think on some level you're right that it does allow that maybe when adversity hits that you just don't have to. You don't have to look like, okay, how am I going to fix this? You can look at like, okay, I'll just go somewhere else at the end of the year, which can lead to other stuff and the things you do. And I think like to be clear, I'm a fan of the transfer portal. I think because we see coaches like up and hightail it out of there like nothing all the time, right? And like I get annoyed. This is a different conversation. You're seeing all of the all in college football, like coaches are jumping for the NFL because it's too much work now. There's NIL, there's the transfer portal. So when a kid has too much work, it's shameful and stuff. And to be clear, I'm not talking about you saying this because I do agree with the things that you said. It's, when a kid runs into adversity, they're not allowed to leave. But coaches, when they run into adversity, they immediately leave, and that's okay, right? Yeah. Like I hate that double standard, and I don't think that's something you would say, but I've seen this from other people that are putting that out there. I think all of these people, like coaches included, should stick through. Like if you really care about the development of kids and players and young student athletes, like men and women, like you should stay in college sports and do that, right? Like if that's really what you cared about this whole time, you should be doing that. And I don't think just having to deal with NIL and everything suddenly makes it so untenable that they must leave. But in the same vein, I think players should be sticking through that too, right? I understand wanting to maximize your earning potential. It's different for guys who have legitimate NBA aspirations, who know how good they are, and guys that I think you know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm not getting playing time here. The coach maybe doesn't like me. I got to get out so I can do a year somewhere else and then get off to the NBA for maybe it's personal reasons, help with family, whatever. You know what I mean? Like guys have motivations that I'm, I fully understandable about. But I think for a lot of guys, their time will come, right? Like I think Jameel Brown is a nice example of this. He could have left after last season when so Jameel committed to Purdue, decommitted and committed to Penn State because Micah Shrewsbury was his primary recruiter at Purdue, follows him to Penn State, ends up staying at Penn State instead of leaving after his first year. And you're seeing him not just make the shots that you expect him to make. I mentioned last night, he had that steal that led to Puff Johnson's layup. He had a couple deflections early where he's you can see it's kind of clicking, right? Because he's still really young. He is a kid. A lot of these guys are kids. And you can see that it's clicking where it's okay, the scheme is making sense. He's being aggressive at the right times, right? The effort was always there, but now it's starting to connect with him and he's starting to feel more comfortable and he's taking a step, right? And Jameel is someone I think that could end up having a pretty big role here down the stretch and being an important player for this program moving forward. And he stuck through it, right? He had big games earlier this season, but didn't see it rewarded with playing time because as Rhodes said, those games were really essentially about his scoring, right? And they weren't about the other stuff. And so that other stuff started to come together. And, before the end of his sophomore year, it looks like he's going to be a key rotation piece moving forward. And I just think that's like, there is a lot of value to working through difficult times, right? And I'm not here to make those judgments because guys deal with stuff behind the scenes all the time.
Yeah.
And I think you would agree with that like there could be other potential factors that lead to guys transferring to and everything like that. But when it's strictly like, I'm not playing enough, and that's kind of the entire basis of it, I understand. And two, like sometimes those guys transfer down a level and it's like, okay, that's probably the level maybe someone should have been playing at the whole time. Like maybe they're just not the level of player to play at, a high major school or whatever. I don't think that's the case with Kanye, to be clear. I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up at a high major school. But I just think like, if you are good enough and you want that, like work for it and go get it. And I believe in those things, but I don't want to like make this a broader, everyone should stay everywhere at all times thing. But when the reasons are solely I'm not getting enough playing time and I think I'm good enough to, I think working through it is a perfectly good solution to that. I just think John, other guys don't always do it.
Right. For me, John, just to go back to the Kanye piece on it when I was saying that he should stick through it because you mentioned, hey, it's 4 regular season games left in the Big Ten tournament. And my thing for it to become to a point to where, hey, it's gotten to the point it was like, hey, I'm putting myself in coach's shoes like, hey, man, we can't have this guy around.
It was untenable.
Right. So that's my frustration with the point because at the end of the day, that means you put yourself in front of them. Even if it comes to like, hey, that minutes went from 20 to 15, and even if it went down to 10, things change. There's a roller coaster in all of a season. Hey, unfortunately, you got injured. Unfortunately, some things happen. Guys have stepped up, but you got to understand, like, my thing was that you had to put the team first. So therefore, if it meant for, hey, I got to take a back seat for this, everybody's seen what you can do. There's no doubt about you can score the ball and guys, but there's some things that happen in a season. And my thing is, like, I felt like he didn't put his team first. You have to look in the mirror, continue to get better. Are you doing this? Are you getting at the extra shots? Are you watching film? Are you having these talks with the coaches and assistant coaches? What can I do to get back my minutes? Hey, how can I do this? What did you see here? Like, are you doing those things? Because I've been in a situation where, hey, man, the game of basketball and and being a pro is a lot of it is based on opportunity. And now you have to look in that mirror and be like, you know what, the opportunity that I had to be to lead Penn State to a postseason or whatever it may be, even if it was just for the 1 year before you move on, I have 4 more games or 5 more games and to be with this team to, continue to grow as a team and make me the best team I can be. But instead I put myself in front of all of it. Again, this is speculation. I hate to speak on it because we don't know, but it seems like, hey, it was too bad for me to be around to the point to where coach had to dismiss me from the team. And my thing, and it hurts you as well, because at the end of the day, now what's your normal day is of coming to practice, going, doing this, all that stuff is out the door. So now how are you continuing to work on your game? How are you continuing to get better? How are you continuing to do this? Where are you going? You're going to, what was the gym? Not the Hub. The other record, you know what I mean?
We're going
yeah, where you going to play basketball? The IM building, you know what I mean? I don't see it. I think that you just have to put the team first. You have to move on. I agree what you said. Transfer portal, I agree. Hey, man, some things just don't work. And you know what? Hey, I made the wrong decision. I need to go somewhere else. But I think for this decision, we saw how good he was. You saw how he was able to put the ball in the basket. He was able to help his team. But at the end, it became about him and not about the team. And I give credit to Coach Rhodes, because at the end of the day, to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna let my leading scorer go because he's, the team, he's not bigger than the team. That takes some balls, especially because a lot of people are gonna look and be like, damn, we let the leading scorer go. You know what I mean? I think it's a little easier now because of transfer portal. But we talk about years ago, you talk about, hey, you know what? I'm gonna let Taylor Battle go or something like that. People be looking at you crazy, like, what? How are you gonna do something like that? So, I give credit to Coach Rhodes. I think I hate to even, we having this discussion about Kanye, because I do think he's a great player and I do think he has a chance to become a good pro. But I want to continue to give credit to that rec hall and the fans that showed up yesterday, because they were tremendous. You saw the videos, every video you have of them storming the court, man. It's pretty awesome, and it brought back chills and memories for me as well. And I'm sure it did for a lot of the former players that were able to watch and see see that again, where the fans would be able to interact with the fans on the court after you just be a top 15 team. So I want to make sure we gave credit to them. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was one of those things. Like I stood up because the fans are like right in front of us on press row, and like when they stand up, you can't, like, there's a part of the court you can't see. So I was like standing at the end too. You know what I mean? Most of press row was, so we could like shoot video of it. And by the way, if you'd like to see video of that, it is on my Twitter at Jon Sauber, and you can find it on SaturdayDaily.com. Always a company man here. But no, I think just to tie a bow on the Kanye situation, like I said, I don't want this to come off as if he's 100% at fault here. I think if you talk to all parties involved, everyone would say that they wish they had handled things differently. This kind of thing, you look back in a few years, like everyone's going to learn from this, right? Like everyone's going to adjust. I don't want to be the one to apportion blame, but I do think that is true on some level for pretty much everyone involved, which, I mean, that's how a lot of these things go, right? And like you said, I think Kanye is a talented player. Like I said, he's a good kid. Every interaction I've had with him is positive. He's always very kind, and I don't want this to come off as anything other than that, because you see, this is the other thing. He goes in the portal. People are tweeting at him, or he goes, not goes in the portal. I would assume he will go in the portal at the end of the year, but he gets dismissed from the team. People are tweeting at him. Like, it's not necessary. Like,
I saw something. He tweeted after the game, and I think he tweeted.
He was happy for Jamil.
Yeah, right. So, you know what I mean? I think, I read through and I saw, man, people were saying, hey, wish you the best. But so
yeah, I saw a bunch of that, and you see like once every like 7, you see people like doing the stuff that they're always doing. Like, stop. I cannot stress this enough. 1, stop tweeting at recruits specifically. 2, stop tweeting mean things at people. It's just, we just don't have to do it. There's no need.
But I think we live in a world of clickbait, man. We live in a world where, if he responds, then that,
it turns into something else. Someone's satisfied because
you get your 5 seconds of fame.
Yeah, it's right. People just trying to draw a reaction, and that's what the biggest thing I've learned in this industry with me. Like, because I understand that I'm more publicly facing, right? Like I do this podcast, I do the Nittany Dispatch football podcast too. Like I'm out there. People see my face. Yeah. And like, so people can attack you more easily. Like you go to comment sections on YouTube, they aren't particularly fun, but a lot of people just want a reaction. Kanye, I don't think has replied to any of it. Good for him. Like he's handling that part of it well. Like, but yeah, just stop tweeting at people, mean stuff. Like that's not necessary. But no, I think that is
John, if I could tell you, if I could tell you some of the stuff I've seen, I've got.
Oh, I'm sure.
Tweets and DMs, and we talking about grown men and women. Like,
yes, listen, I can't promise that when you were a Sixer that I didn't say some of those things when watching you play, but I didn't tweet them. And like, I can say that in my room by myself watching that game. And listen, I'm at least owning it to you right now that I probably said some shit at the time.
I'm sure you did, man. The whole Philly city, just anybody that put on a jersey was getting it rad from Philly.
Yeah,
still to this day, like
it's a passionate city. We love our sports teams. Like there's nothing quite like it. That's for sure. But I think that's probably a good place to leave it. If you'd like to follow Tim, you can follow him on Twitter as well at TimFraze23. You can follow me on Twitter at Jon Sauber. Like I said, you can find my writing at SaturdayDaily.com. There's actually been a lot of basketball stuff there recently. Some stuff on the Kanye situation, some stuff on what this team is moving forward, which is, I think for fans, they should be excited. And I think this is an exciting time. And you and I will be back to presumably talk about this team in I'm sure, a completely different light, because they go one direction and then swing wildly in the other very quickly. So we'll see how this goes. But
it's like, John, it's like they strike out three times, and then the fourth at bat they just hit home runs, man.
Yeah, it's bases are loaded. The game it's 3-0. They're down. They hit a grand slam. Yeah. Right. Every single time. So very excited for them to presumably, I don't know, lose to Indiana and then beat Iowa, or lose these last 4 and then win the Big Ten tournament, something like that. I'm sure. But we'll be here to follow it along and talk to you guys all along the whole way. So thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.